A noise in the attic. A shadow in the hallway. A figure watching from the darkness. Most people ignored these signs at first, until their cameras revealed something they were never supposed to see. These disturbing videos captured moments that turned ordinary houses into places no one wanted to stay in. They tried to ignore it at first, but the noises only grew louder. Eventually, one family member gathered the courage to investigate and carefully pushed open the attic hatch using a long stick. What they saw instantly sent them running. Hidden in the darkness was a pale, unsettling face, staring back at them, something that appeared almost human, yet strangely unnatural. Terrified and unable to explain the sight, the family spent the rest of the night together, too frightened to approach the attic again. A recently married couple began hearing heavy footsteps coming from the attic of an old family home and decided to investigate the source. At first, when they checked the space in person, nothing seemed unusual, and they found no clear signs of an intruder. However, when they later reviewed footage they had recorded, they noticed something unsettling. A strange, humanoid figure appeared to be moving within the attic, resembling something otherworldly or alien-like in form. Although it seemed to remain mostly still and non-aggressive, its presence was deeply disturbing. Uncertain of what it was or how to respond, the couple chose not to confront it directly, and instead avoided disturbing whatever might be living above them. A Texas homeowner was startled awake on the night of the 11th of March 2026 by strange noises echoing across his property. Worried, he went outside to investigate and soon heard loud banging coming from an old shed in the backyard. As he moved closer, he briefly saw a shadowy figure that quickly disappeared into the darkness. The next night, around 2 a.m., the disturbances returned. His wife also reported hearing movement near the shed, prompting him to go out again with a flashlight. This time, he saw a human-like figure clinging to the ceiling rafters. When the light hit it, no clear facial features were visible, leaving him shaken and unable to explain what he had witnessed. In London, a woman who had long feared she was being watched finally found disturbing proof of her suspicion. After returning home one evening, she heard faint rustling noises coming from the attic, as though someone was moving carefully above her ceiling. Too alarmed to investigate alone, she contacted her landlord for help. When they checked the attic together, they discovered clear signs that someone had been secretly living there. A pillow, a blanket, and small ventilation holes cut into the roof suggested a hidden occupant had been staying for some time. Nothing like it had been there before. It seemed the intruder had fled recently after realizing they were about to be caught, leaving the woman shaken enough to move out immediately. Filming their home at night, a person noticed their small dog had become fixated on a closed basement door, visibly nervous and unwilling to look away. When they opened it, the basement beyond was dark and silent. As they descended the stairs, a faint, high-pitched screaming sound began echoing through the space. The room appeared empty until the camera panned across it, revealing a tall, solid black figure standing motionless in the darkness. The person filming reacted with an audible gasp of shock before the recording cut off entirely, leaving the figure's presence and the source of the screaming both unexplained. A mine worker somewhere in Nevada on the 12th of September 2022 returned early to his post and immediately felt that something was wrong. Despite having exclusive access to the site, he was overcome by the sense that another presence was already inside the mine with him. As he moved deeper, he spotted a pair of bright eyes staring back at him from the darkness, attached to a figure whose appearance he could not recognize or explain. He managed to capture only a brief moment of it on recording before the situation escalated. The figure suddenly appeared to rush toward him, forcing him to drop everything and flee the mine without looking back. A woman shared a video on TikTok at the Paraworld after hearing noise in her room coming from upstairs, and when she checked it, she saw the curtain move. Moments later, an object mounted on the wall suddenly falls to the floor without any contact. The woman later described the clip as the most frightening thing she had ever recorded, saying the experience left her too disturbed to stay in the room afterward. Abandoned house activity. Recorded near the end of May 2026, footage opens with on-screen text reading that the woman filming had only intended to finish cleaning an abandoned house before something interrupted the task. The camera follows her as she opens a door into a well-lit room before turning toward a long, empty hallway extending into darkness. At the far end, a dark entity appears repeatedly, peeking around the corner before retreating out of sight, only to reappear moments later in the same spot. The figure never fully emerges into the hallway, but its repeated appearances. In a small village, police were called after neighbors reported disturbing noises coming from a woman's house attic. When officers arrived, they heard heavy movement and growling sounds coming from above. One officer stood below with a torch and calmly called out her name, Kamilka, asking her to come down. She did not respond, while other officers remained outside, unsure of how to proceed. Moments later, the recording abruptly cut, leaving a blacked-out screen and viewers confused about what followed. According to a neighbor, police eventually forced entry into the attic, removed the woman, and took her to the hospital. She was later released without charges, and her behavior remains unexplained. For several nights, a man was repeatedly awakened by strange noises coming from the attic above his bedroom. Unable to figure out the source, he decided to place a camera in the attic and leave it recording overnight. When he later reviewed the footage, he was shocked by what appeared on screen. A mysterious figure seemed to emerge from behind a large extractor unit before briefly revealing itself to the camera. The unsettling clip quickly convinced the homeowner that something unusual was sharing the space with him. After watching the recording, he became convinced that a paranormal entity was occupying the attic. At a home in Manchester, a man who had been woken up several nights in a row by paranormal activity that followed a consistent pattern, enough that he eventually set up a camera to capture it directly, shows a door opening on its own, and when he repeatedly asked what was responsible for shutting it, the door slammed closed in response to his request.
Instead of opening this door like you have been doing, I want you to close it. I want you to use all your energy.
Moments later, a knocking sound began coming from the attic above, continuing the activity from a different part of the house entirely.
Why are you doing this now? When we've just clearly been...
The consistency of the pattern across multiple nights suggested whatever was present had settled into a routine of its own. Footage from a paranormal investigation captured something the investigators themselves may not have noticed at the moment. As the team moved through the building documenting their findings, a figure passed by on the left side of the frame, visible only briefly before disappearing from view entirely. The figure did not interact with anyone present and showed no awareness of being filmed. Reviewers who later analyzed the clip frame by frame found no equipment, staff member, or visitor that could account for who or what had crossed through the shot during the investigation. TikTok user at XJustDryAnks began documenting consistent, disturbing noises coming from the attic above his gardening tool storage. Each time he investigated directly, he found nothing out of place and no sign of activity.
Is anybody up here?
Eventually, he left a recording ring camera running in his absence. What it captured was the loud noise of objects being thrown and broken, accompanied at times by a growl that did not resemble anything human or animal. The pattern repeated across multiple recorded sessions, with the camera consistently picking up activity that stopped the moment anyone went up to check in person. An Instagram user recently shared an intriguing clip showing a series of experiments carried out in a basement rumored to be haunted. In the first recording, unexplained footsteps can be heard moving through the room before a nearby balloon is suddenly struck by an unseen force. A second clip appears even stranger, showing the homeowner's hand being slapped moments after similar sounds echo through the basement. Curious about the activity, a final experiment was conducted in an attempt to gather more evidence. Across all three recordings, the alleged presence appears to react to attention, interacting with its surroundings, rather than remaining hidden. Upon hearing numerous disturbing sounds that were coming from underground, a homeowner in Boston went down to investigate. At first, he found nothing out of the ordinary and was preparing to leave when a strange object suddenly fell to the ground nearby. It appeared to be a small toy or doll he had never seen before, accompanied by a handwritten note. Moments later, another noise caught his attention, and he noticed the object was no longer where it had landed. As he moved closer to inspect it, a voice seemingly called out to him directly. Startled by the experience, he left immediately, abandoning both the object and the note behind. Having noticed that the dogs were terrified and the place was being partly trashed, the source of this clip decided to leave behind a recording camera. After leaving for work, the camera captured a series of unusual events inside the home. First, the washing machine appeared to start on its own, followed shortly by the vacuum cleaner activating without anyone nearby. Moments later, the television switched on by itself. The activity did not stop there, as various objects were then seen being thrown across the room, one after another. The footage seemed to provide an explanation for both the disorder in the house and the dog's fearful behavior, while raising even more questions about what had caused it. Sortelha figure. A paranormal investigator who was checking out a really old abandoned home in an isolated location of a village in Sortelha, Portugal, noticed something unusual almost as soon as he stepped inside. A mysterious figure could be seen within the property, remaining partially hidden from view throughout the encounter.
Nossa, aqui ó, começou a mexer. E olha que...
Despite the investigator's presence, it never acknowledged him or attempted to interact. Instead, it kept its distance, lingering silently in the background as he explored the abandoned structure. What made the sighting particularly unsettling was the figure's complete lack of reaction, neither fleeing nor approaching. Although it never fully revealed itself, its presence remained visible for much of the investigation. A store owner in Mexico City was alerted at 3 a.m. by a security notification from his shop's storage room. Checking the cameras remotely, he found one of the dolls kept in storage moving on its own, shifting position with no one nearby to account for the movement. The footage captured the full sequence clearly enough that he chose to share it publicly rather than dismiss it. Nothing else in the storage room appeared disturbed, and the doll's movement showed no obvious mechanical cause, leaving the owner to question what else might be sharing the space with his inventory. A man in Maine who experiences regular paranormal activity at his home was recording one evening when something tore a stuffed animal down from his window, pulling it free with enough force to dislodge it completely. He went to investigate immediately afterward and found nothing in the area that could account for what had happened. No person, no animal, and no visible cause for the sudden movement. The stuffed animal itself showed signs of having been forcefully removed rather than simply falling. For a household already accustomed to unexplained activity, this incident stood out enough to be recorded and shared separately. One Saturday afternoon, Bonita Adonis was home alone in her kitchen when her security camera recorded a shadow passing through the frame, immediately followed by her stove beginning to shake violently on its own, before lifting slightly and slamming back down. The incident occurred just weeks after her grandmother passed away in the same house while under Bonita's care, and her relatives, gathered there in the aftermath, have suggested the activity could be her grandmother's presence making itself known. Whether the cause was something environmental, mechanical, or something else entirely, the stove's behavior that afternoon had no ordinary explanation offered. While checking the laundry room after hearing a rodent trapped inside, Catalina and her family were recording when they noticed something none of them had expected: a clear, human-shaped silhouette standing motionless in the corner near the window. Because the figure remained completely still throughout, several who later viewed the clip described it as looking like someone quietly watching the room. Days later, Catalina's son drove a remote-controlled car into the same space, and a strange whisper was audible before he quickly backed out. Shortly after, a foam mat lifted off the floor and was thrown into the air on its own. Staying overnight at a motel in Memphis, Tennessee, during a cross-country trip, the source of this footage discovered something inside the bathroom just as he was preparing to take a bath. His first assumption was that it was a rodent, or possibly a raccoon that had found its way in through an opening somewhere. After recording and sharing the clip online, viewers convinced him the explanation was considerably less ordinary than either of those options. What exactly was sharing the bathroom with him that night and how it had gotten there was never determined with any certainty. Returning from a bathroom break, the source of this footage began hearing giggling coming from the direction of his bedroom, a sound that did not belong to anyone who should have been in the house at that hour. He followed the noise toward its source rather than dismissing it, camera already recording. What he found inside the bedroom when he reached it has not been described beyond the footage itself, though the giggling stopped the moment he arrived. Whatever had been making the sound either left the room or simply went quiet the instant it was approached directly. An elderly woman at home noticed something looking at her from just outside her door, a creature with features she could not immediately place. Her first instinct was that it might be her pet, but the facial structure was wrong in ways that ruled that out almost immediately.
Ain't nobody in the other room. Look at this.
Distorted and unfamiliar in a manner no domestic animal could produce. Whether it was attempting to mimic her pet's appearance or simply happened to resemble it in outline, she made no move to approach or investigate further. The figure remained at the door, watching, for long enough to be noticed and recorded before the clip ends.
Oh my gosh. My in the other room.
A man named Ricardo Morones, captured after a series of unsettling incidents inside his home, became increasingly convinced that something had been observing him for an extended period. The first sign of this came when a faint face briefly appeared in the darkness of his house, only visible for a moment before disappearing. Soon after, an even more disturbing sight was noticed outside his window, clearly visible from inside and belonging to no known person.
Modé y todo, ya me quiero dormir, ya tengo sueño, pero tienen la luz del pasillo prendida y mi mamá está escuchando un video, güey.
The two events may have been connected, though it is unclear whether the same presence was responsible for both appearances or if separate incidents occurred. The experience left him unsettled, unsure of what he had truly witnessed. Filming a dark room at night, a person noticed a large black silhouette visible through the window, the shape of a head and shoulders watching from outside in the darkness. After several seconds, they turned on the light, and the silhouette appeared to vanish, the change attributed to reflection, now obscuring the glass. When the camera zoomed in on the window, despite the light being on, two small points of glowing light became visible, staring directly into the room from the same spot the silhouette had occupied. The figure had not left. It had simply become harder to see. Arriving home from work, a man went inside to get something to eat, and partway through the meal, noticed something watching him through the window. It was a shadow of what looked like a little one, staring at him without moving for almost 3 minutes straight. Unsettled, he went outside to check the property and found the little one again, though not in any way that brought relief or explanation. What he encountered outside has not been described in detail, only that finding the little one again was considerably worse than the original sighting through the window had been. A lone man was recording a video for his social media when his door started to be knocked on continuously.
Hello?
He paused the recording and went downstairs to check, but by the time he reached the front door, the knocking had already stopped. Although there was no one visible outside, he was struck by an immediate and unsettling feeling that whatever had been knocking was no longer beyond the door. He did not describe any further events in detail, only stating that the presence seemed to remain inside the home for the rest of the night, leaving him deeply uneasy and unable to shake the feeling. Paranormal investigator Ali set out to explore one of Cairo, Egypt's most reputedly haunted houses, expecting the worst of the experience to take place inside the property itself. What he had not anticipated was that the most unsettling moment would come only after he had already exited the building, stepping back out into open air, believing the investigation was effectively over. Something beyond easy explanation occurred at that point, leaving him with the unmistakable impression that whatever was inside had been aware of his presence the entire time, both during the exploration and after he thought he had left it behind. An elderly man in Kansas was hearing continuous noise coming from the top of the roof of his house and decided to investigate while attempting to record evidence of the disturbance. Instead of climbing directly onto the roof, he moved across his property to observe the area from a safer distance. From there, he reportedly saw a figure with a non-human appearance, including distinct glowing eyes, visible in the dim light.
Oh, damn. Holy shit. All right.
The sight was enough to stop him from approaching any further, and he remained at a distance for the rest of the encounter. What he witnessed served as confirmation of something he had not expected to find on his property. A 12-year-old clip has recently resurfaced online, pulling in new attention from viewers who had never seen it before. In the first part, a woman walked down a hotel staircase and noticed a gray shadow rising up from below, moving steadily toward her, with no clear shape to it. She saw it clearly with her own eyes and ran without looking back. In a separate clip from the same hotel, a man walking through an empty hallway suddenly had a similar gray shadow appear directly in front of him, dragging him backward before letting go just as suddenly. He didn't stay to figure out what it was. Guests who have stayed at that hotel since claim certain hallways still feel colder than the rest of the building. A rideshare driver picked up a woman late one night for a short ride across town. At first, she sat quietly. A few minutes in, her body twisted in a way that didn't look natural, and her face seemed to change completely. The driver kept checking his mirror, unsure what was happening behind him. His dashcam later showed her climbing toward the driver, as if she weighed nothing at all and making eerie face gestures. He dropped her off without asking questions, and never picked up a night ride again. He says he still hears her voice sometimes. A couple were in the middle of an argument when the woman stepped into the bathroom to be alone for a moment. The door shut on its own, and for a few seconds, nothing seemed unusual. When it opened again briefly, she appeared pressed against the upper wall, completely still. The door closed once more, and when it opened the next time, she was found lying in the bathtub, her eyes dark and her body unresponsive.
Paige! Paige! Paige!
No one in the house could explain how she got there or what happened in those few seconds alone. What really happened behind that door?